The C-SPAN Civics bus is traveling the country, visiting libraries, bookstores, festivals, and authors. Here are some of the people and places we visited.
We're here with Jedwin Smith, author of Our Brother's Keeper, My Family's Journey Through Vietnam to Hell and Back. Mr. Smith, please explain who your brother was.
Jeff was my younger brother, best friend, best man at our wedding, and he was a hippie. He was in the hippie movement before it was really popular in '67. And growing up, I fought all of his fights. He was Mr. Love and Mr. Peace, and just a beautiful guy. And in 1967, around Thanksgiving time, he showed up to the dinner table, and the hair was gone, and he announced that he'd joined the Marine Corps. And I was proud. I was proud of him, and my dad was proud of him. My brothers and sisters, my ma, were really upset. And then 112 days later, Jeff was dead. He was killed in the Tet Offensive in '68. And it destroyed our family. Everyone blamed my dad and I. We never spoke. The family never spoke for 30 years. And then in 2000, I got a phone call from my younger brother, Joe, and he'd found Jeff's best friend on the internet. And that's what began a journey of healing. You know, everyone thinks that it's a war book, and it's really not. It's a book about healing. And what I did is the problems we had with part of the problem with Jeff's death was that the Marine Corps, all they said was Jeff died on March the 7th from artillery, rocket, or mortar fire in Quang Tri Province. Is like saying someone died in Ohio, and that was it. And that Jeff was a member, Fox Company, 2nd Battalion, 4th Marines, and that was all the information we had. And so me and my other younger brother, for 30 years, we tried to find out information. And Jeff had written like 120 letters from Vietnam, but he never mentioned any of his buddies by name. And so we just had this big vacuum that we kind of operated in. And then, through the internet, of all things, we found Jeff's best friend in Massillon, Ohio, a guy named Jim Arnold. And I immediately flew out to see Jim, and Jim was petrified to meet me because he always blamed himself that Jeff died. In combat, he was Jeff's best friend, and he felt that he should have been able to protect Jeff. He had that guilt. I had the guilt, like if anybody should have died in Vietnam, it should have been me and not Jeff. And there was immediate healing. And through Jim Arnold, I found the other 7 surviving members of Fox Trot 2-4. 58 of their riflemen were killed in a 54-day period. There was only 8 survivors. And through the course of the next year, I found all 8 survivors. We went to Vietnam together. And, as I tell people, I'm not a saint by any means, but really all I lived for 30 years was to find the guy who killed my brother and kill him. I thought that would, make everything right. It turns out, when I got to Vietnam, I actually met the gentleman who killed my brother, a guy named Mr. An. He was a VC battalion commander. And the healing, there's, us Marines, we're tough guys. We're, we can whip the world and all that. Marines don't cry, I cried more that day that I met Mr. An than I had in my entire life. And it was miraculous in a sense, is that the healing was automatic. Mr. An, he was very nervous, And I told him, I said, you know, Mr. Ahn, if I'd met you a year before today, I would have killed you. I said, I'm not proud of that, but I would have killed you. And he said, I know, I see it in your eyes. And we hugged, we cried, and he says, but now our war's over, and I pray that your children know peace, and my children know peace. And I don't know if it was just, it was like 300 pounds of weight, you know, 300 pounds of hate were just lifted off my shoulders. And even my closest friends said, when I got back from Vietnam, they said, yeah, I can't believe you're not the same guy. And you know, I had never planned to write the story. You know, I wanted the healing. I guess I wanted the closure. And when I got back, my agent asked, well, where you been? And I said, you know, I've been to Vietnam. And I started telling her the story, and she said, oh my God, that's a book. And so that wasn't my plan, but, you know, it's a book.
How do you write a book about something so painful to you personally?
That was, you know, I always wanted to be an author. And, you know, you read the how-to books and all that stuff, and then, you know, something falls in your lap. I'd sit down at the computer, and I'd be writing and crying at the same time. And my wife would come in, and, you know, she'd be, you know, it was almost like a church service. She'd be praying, you know, she'd be putting hands on me, praying, and I'd be writing and crying, and it, you know, it's just like I spilled my guts on paper. And, you know, I thought, well, you know, surely my editor back there, John Wiley and Sons, would complain, saying, oh, this is too sentimental, this is too gushy and all that. He called me up when he started receiving chapters. He called me up crying, and he says, my God. He says, is it possible to get, can you get some more emotion in this? And I thought, I don't have any tears left. But we worked on it. And, you know, it was just, it was a struggle. It was a struggle. You know, the hardest thing, it's hard when a loved one dies. You go through that grief. Then you got the period where you're burying it, you know. And then, but to dig it up and rehash it again and again, you know, every author, oh, I can't wait for these book signings. Well, then you have your book signings, and you're constantly talking about it. So you're constantly dealing with it, which is, I found out, is healthy, because I can actually talk about it now without crying. Before, I couldn't, you know, I'd see a picture of the wall and tears would start, and then I'd fight them back, and, you know, the anger and the hatred and all that stuff would keep bubbling up. But, you know, I can actually live with myself, and I'm not a detriment to society, I guess.
Jedwin Smith, the book is Our Brother's Keeper, My Family's Journey Through Vietnam to Hell and Back. Thank you so much for sharing your story with us.
It's my pleasure. Thank you.
You can view Book TV programs, sign up for a weekly email of our schedule, and learn about upcoming programs at booktv.org.